Hi, it's Taylor T. Carlson, and I'm back with another video for you. Been a while since I did anything rock and roll related, so I thought it would be time to get back into that. And today we are going to be taking a look at this. This is the Def Leppard CD Collection, Volume 1. Def Leppard, of course, one of my favorite classic hard rock bands. They started out in the late 70s with a much more raw sound, and then really started to develop their sound in the 80s, taking on a more commercial approach. The commercial approach and a few experiments would continue into the 90s and onto the present day, and while some of their catalog is viewed as hit and miss, and there are some people that say the band sold out, overall I would say Def Leppard is still one of my favorite groups despite that. This is a new collection that combines their first 4 albums as well as a few rarities. There's the top of the case, bottom with all the copyright info. You'll notice on the side here, it's got like the very narrow edge of their logo. So like if you buy all the box sets as they release them, I'm assuming that'll form their triangle logo. Here's the cases and the booklets in their respective packaging. So let's go ahead and unbox this thing and see what we've got in here. Okay, disc 1 in this set, of course, is On Through the Night, the band's first feature-length LP. Came out in 1980. This is my favorite album of all time by any artist. Very raw, a very far cry from the Def Leppard that bands would come to know and love over the years. Inside you got the gatefold with lyrics, the old triangle band logo, pictures of the band members. On the back here you've got the back of the original album sleeve, and we'll pop this open now. Just a plain white sleeve here for the CD itself. And it's a little hard to get these CDs out of here, so please bear with me. And here's the actual CD. You'll notice these actually have the Vertigo label on them, which was the UK label, instead of the Mercury logo, which is what they were released on in the United States. So I'm going to put that back in the case, and just to show you how that compares to the original vinyl, I've got my American vinyl LP here. You'll notice on this version, they've added the band name Def Leppard right above where it says On Through the Night. That's actually not on the CD that I have here. I believe it was that way on the original UK release. I could be wrong. Don't quote me on that. And you'll notice this vinyl has no inner gatefold. I'm guessing that was probably exclusive to the original as well, the original UK release. Here's the back cover, and then here's the CD version. So you can kind of get an idea. These look pretty similar. I think the packaging that's in these new releases is certainly faithful to the original releases. While we're on the subject of On Through the Night, I'll also show you my actual vinyl disc. You'll notice this has the Mercury sleeve on it, so it's a very different design from the UK one, and then same deal on the back there as well. Moving on down the list, we have High and Dry, the group's second album. The first album was produced by Tom Allom, probably best known for his work with Judas Priest, but here they teamed up with Robert John Mutt Lange for the first time, and this album ended up starting to put the group on the map because it had songs like Bringing on the Heartbreak, and then other minor hits like The Title Cut and Let It Go. And then you got the photo of the band members here and all the production info and track list. Oddly enough, the song On Through the Night is actually on the album High and Dry. I have no idea why that is, but here's the sleeve for the CD. We'll pull this out. And this pretty much looks the same as the On Through the Night one with the Vertigo sleeve. Yeah, unfortunately, the only one I actually have on vinyl is On Through the Night, so I can't really do the comparisons with every single album to its vinyl counterparts, so let's move on down the list. Third album, of course, 1983, Pyromania, also produced by Robert John Mutt Lange. Guitarist Pete Willis got fired by this, and he was replaced by Phil Collen, formerly of the band Girl. Interesting trivia, that band Girl also featured Phil Lewis, later the singer of LA Guns. This one's just in a plain red sleeve, and we'll pull the CD out of here. Again, pretty much the same Vertigo sleeve as the first 2 albums. Two interesting pieces of trivia on here. I don't know how well you can actually see this on here because it's printed pretty small, but there's a keyboard credit for someone named Booker T. Boffin. That's actually Thomas Dolby, the guy who's known for the song She Blinded Me with Science. So yeah, the guy who did She Blinded Me with Science actually worked on a Def Leppard album. Kind of hard to believe, but it actually happened. Following that album, there wouldn't be another Def Leppard album for another 4 years because of a lot of delays and tragedies, namely drummer Rick Allen being in a car crash that actually resulted in him losing his left arm, and he had to learn to play one arm. The follow-up came up in 1987, and that was the Hysteria album. 7 of the 12 songs on this album were released as singles, and it ended up being the most famous, most successful album the group ever made. If Pyromania made the band stars, it's this band that made them legends. There's the inner gatefold of Hysteria. And then you got some printed text and photographs on the inner sleeve there. And pulling out the CD. Now this CD looks totally different from the other ones, which had that kind of generic Vertigo design on them. And that's it for the 4 albums that are in here, but the content does not stop there, as you will soon see. Next up, we have Live at the LA Forum 1983. This was actually released as a bonus disc with the deluxe edition of Pyromania that was released a few years ago. And great concert, great set list. Just a plain white sleeve for this one, but I'll pull this out so you can take a look at the actual disc. Again, these are kind of hard to get out of here. I'm trying not to break anything. There's the actual CD. And we'll put this away, and we got one more disc to look at before we go to the booklet that everything's contained in. And the next disc is Rarities Volume 1. Def Leppard has a lot of stuff, deep in their vault that's not just on the records. So anytime there's a Def Leppard Rarities package, I'm all over that. Got some really cool, rare vintage photos there, as well as info for each of the tracks. And then it's got this little hardbound booklet, which has some new essays and photos, and here's some random testimony from the band. You got photos of the album covers in here, and then after that, here's some information, on each album. Again, I'm not going to look at every single page in here, but I'll show off a few of the highlights. There's some more great vintage photos of the band. I'm guessing most of these are Ross Halfin photographs, who was the photographer best known for taking pictures of the band. He's done some great work over the years. And then here's the track list and some information for the live disc that's in the set, and then the Rarities Volume 1. Here's some info from the band, some written text, and then there's actually a little bonus item in here as well. This is not mentioned on the packaging, though oddly it is mentioned on the little sticker that comes on the shrink wrap. You can see there's something in here. So we pull this out, and it's a little mini CD. This is the Def Leppard EP, which the group recorded prior to On Through the Night. There's 3 songs on here. Right Into the Sun, which was actually re-recorded as a B-side in 1987 and then repurposed for the retroactive album with some changes. The latter 2 songs, Get Your Rocks Off and The Overture, were re-recorded for On Through the Night. And then also, they were retitled. Get Your Rocks Off was just re-entitled Rocks Off for On Through the Night, and The Overture was just called Overture. And before I move on, let me get this back in the case first. This is a tiny little sleeve, and it's kind of hard to get back in here. I really wish they had, included the actual Def Leppard EP artwork instead of just this, black sleeve on here, and they really should have made more of a mention of that on the actual packaging rather than just on the little sticker on the shrink wrap. Before I move on, I just wanted to show two other things from my Def Leppard collection. This is the Viva Hysteria Blu-ray set they did. They recorded this live in 2013 out here in Las Vegas at the now closed down joint at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino, and actually got guitarist Vivian Campbell to autograph that prior to a what was it, Last in Line show, because he was the original guitarist in Dio also, so he was doing those gigs with those guys. And then I got my battle jacket on right here, and if I turn around, I don't know if you can really see it from this angle. Kind of hard to get just right with the camera like that, but yeah, right there in the middle, I got my On Through the Night patch. Kind of hard to see. Sorry about the lame camera angles, but that's what we got to deal with, unfortunately. So, how does this set fare? If you're a diehard Def Leppard fan, or you're someone who's a fan and you're looking to fill up your collection, this is definitely a great place to start. The albums have all been remastered, and admittedly, something like On Through the Night, which was very raw to begin with, is never going to sound great, but I did notice, a few little nuances in the mix that were brought out. Definitely sounds a little cleaner, and stuff like Pyromania and Hysteria, which had a much bigger budget production with Robert John Mutt Lange at the helm. Those are the albums, of course, that are going to sound the absolute best here. And I also noticed when I was doing research, there was also released an early years box set, which has the same remastered versions of On Through the Night and High and Dry, but then it just has 3 bonus discs that are more pertinent to that earlier era of the band. I wasn't aware of that before, but that's something that I might have to consider picking up in the future because it's got some rare stuff from those early days I wouldn't mind having on a CD. Now, I'm not going to talk about at great lengths the individual albums, so I'll just go through and talk about a few of my highlights. On Through the Night, my personal favorite. Tracks like Rock Brigade and Hello America are great anthems for the ages. They even tried their hands at epics here with things like Overture and When the Walls Came Tumbling Down, the latter of which actually has a spoken word intro from Dave Cousins from the Strawbs, an old British group from the late 60s who apparently have been performing ever since. And my personal favorite track on this one, of course, is Sorrow is a Woman. Great, slow, melodic half ballad of sorts. Definitely a Def Leppard song, well worth rediscovering. And the re-recorded version of Rocks Off, which was originally on the EP, on this version it actually has a fake audience, which is just kind of cheesy, but I love it for those very reasons. And High and Dry, of course, has the classic hypnosis artwork with the guy diving into the pool, and this was the final one to feature Pete Willis as a full-time member of the group. There's some great material on here, of course. Bringing On the Heartbreak is the song that put the band on the map. And then you got a lot of other, minor hits like Let It Go and what's the other big one on this? The title cut, High and Dry, Saturday Night. But then there's a lot of great underrated gems on this one too, like, You Got Me Running, Lady Strange, and the song On Through the Night, which oddly enough is on this album and not On Through the Night. So, go figure. There were also 2 remix bonus tracks that were added to High and Dry. They were added to High and Dry in later years, which are remix versions of Bringing On the Heartbreak and Me and My Wine, which was another B-side. And those are not on the CD version here, but they are on the Rarities disc, so they were included in this set. Pyromania, the album that just took the band to the next level. They were opening for Billy Squier on this tour, but by the end of the tour, Billy Squier was opening for them. Photograph, Foolin', Rock of Ages, some of the biggest hits from the band came from this record, but then there's a lot of underrated deep cuts like Die Hard the Hunter and Coming Under Fire. So don't write this one off for just being an album with radio hits, because there are some great cuts on here. And then, of course, we have Hysteria, the biggest, most popular album of all. You got the big hits that were released as singles like Pour Some Sugar on Me, Rocket, Animal, Armageddon It. But then it has the 5 other songs that weren't released as singles, and my favorite song on this album is Gods of War, which was not released as a single, but a great underrated track that's absolutely worth rediscovering or discovering for the first time for any fan of Def Leppard. Sadly, this would be Steve Clark's final album with the band as a full-time member, as he died in early 1991 at the age of 30. Some of his recordings would be heard on the later released Retroactive package as well. Then we've got, like I said before, the Live at the LA Forum 83 release from the Pyromania tour. This has got a great track list with albums from the first 3 records. There's even 2 tracks from On Through the Night on here, which I thought was kind of a nice surprise, because it's like the band pretty much disregards that these days and mostly considers High and Dry their first real effort. But the real surprise on this is they've got a cover version of Travelin' Band, the old Creedence Clearwater Revival song, and there's a guest on that song, Brian May, the guitarist from Queen. That's definitely worth the price of admission alone on this particular disc. And we got the Rarities disc. The first 3 tracks are all from the On Through the Night era. You have alternate single versions of Wasted and Hello America, which are not the same versions that were on Through the Night, plus a killer B-side, Good Morning Freedom. The group actually performed that on their Viva Hysteria residency out here in Vegas, and I was really surprised to hear that. Going down the list, like I said, you've also got the remixes of Bringing on the Heartbreak and Me and My Wine, which were on some releases of High and Dry, but were later deleted from those, disappointingly, because I think they were nice additions to the album. But I'm good with them including them on this Rarities disc. Tear It Down is a song that was later also released on Adrenalize. I'm guessing the version on Adrenalize is different from this. I don't have the 2 albums right next to me, so I can't compare them or really check my notes at the moment. These next few songs, I Want to Be Your Hero, Ride Into the Sun, re-recording of the song from the EP, and Ring of Fire, those would later be remixed, had some re-recorded elements, few alterations, and those versions would be included on the Retroactive CD in 1993. The version of Ride Into the Sun on here actually has a drum intro from Rick Allen, whereas the version of this same recording from Retroactive has a piano intro, which was played by Ian Hunter of Mott the Hoople fame. And then the last track on here is Release Me, which is a cover of the old Engelbert Humperdinck song, which actually features lead vocals from Stumpus Maximus, who was the group's touring manager. Now, I love Def Leppard Rarities, but unfortunately, I am kind of disappointed with how this is only about 40 minutes of material. There were 2 early bootleg releases called First Strike and War Child, and those have some songs from the pre-Def Leppard EP era, including things like Heat Street, See the Lights, Glad I'm Alive, War Child, Beyond the Temple, Medicine Man, Tomorrow Seems Like Yesterday. These songs have never been released by the band in any shape or form, to my knowledge. There was a live version of Medicine Man in that early years set I talked about earlier, and I believe there's also a version of Glad I'm Alive in there as well, but I wish they would have thrown on a little more here. There were also some remixes of songs from Hysteria, which were like single B-sides, and those aren't included here either. So if they would have just, put forth a little more effort with the rarities in this, I would be a lot happier with the package. It's interesting to note that those earlier recordings were actually the only material that the band ever recorded, to my knowledge, with Tony Kenning, who was their first drummer. He was later replaced by Frank Noon, who drummed on the Def Leppard EP. I don't know if Noon was just a session player or if he was actually a full-time member of the band who didn't last that long. I've seen differing sources on that, so I can't say for sure, but then he was replaced by Rick Allen, who's been with them ever since. Anyway, as a diehard Def Leppard fan, I'm definitely impressed with this release. I would like to have seen a little more effort go into the whole rarities aspect. There's going to be more releases in this series. Volume 2 is already out, which covers the 90s era. I don't know if I'm going to pick that up yet. I'm admittedly not as big a fan of their post-80s stuff as I am their classic stuff, but there is still some highlights, so if I get that, I would definitely do an unboxing and a review for that as well. Also, on the lines of those First Strike and War Child releases, I just want to add that I do not condone the purchase of bootlegs in any way. By all means, support Def Leppard, support the band, buy the official releases. I just want to see some of that material on an official release because there is some great early stuff that I think really deserves to be heard by fans of the band, particularly people like me who love the early stuff. Now, are you a Def Leppard fan, and have you picked up this release or any of the other new box sets they've put out? What did you think? Comment in the section down below. Let me know what you think. Also, remember to subscribe to my channel and like this video if you found it helpful. I'm Taylor T. Carlson, and I will see you in my next review.